Hello. I thought I would talk a little bit about why I think that there are no Skyrim-likes, yet, at least. And because I think it is an interesting subject, I've spent some time thinking about it for various reasons. And this the me actually making this video finally was a result of a tweet, or a blue sky tweet I saw the other day, which will come later in the presentation. And so I think first is the question, like, why do we care? Well, I think as players, I think there's a lot of us who really, really loved Skyrim, who looks back at Skyrim fondly and has had a lot of good, fun, amazing hours just playing Skyrim. And so wanting more of something like Skyrim is pretty natural. I don't think that's particularly controversial, nor is the fact that as a game dev, uh, you can see it from the other side. Like, why would we want to make a Skyrim like, or why would someone want to make a Skyrim like? And the answer to that, there's many ways to answer that. Like, you could care about, like, I want to make a fantasy world or something like that, but there's one really, really good reason. As a you know someone who there's a really good reason for a game dev studio to want to make a Skyrim like, and that is that Skyrim has sold like 50 million copies easily. And so that is, I think, one of the, like, if you just count like single player games on PC, like ignoring Nintendo, I guess, that's like one of the, like, top selling games of all times or something like that. So there's a lot of money there, right? So someone should have tried this, but no one has, and that is a little bit strange, I think. So I think it's interesting from that point of view. And a little bit later, I will say why I think that, an indie Skyrim may actually never happen, depending on your definition by indie. But yeah, let's go on. So, so I want to divide this into three parts. Don't worry, it's going to be a relatively quick presentation, I think. First is just what I call design spaces, and this may be a very well-known, long-used term. I think I first heard about it reading Jeff Vogel's blog, the Avernum guy, Spiderweb guy, in some blog he wrote, and to me it just means that it's sort of the genre is like the easiest way to put it, but like everything that makes that a certain type of game, what it is, and everything that fits inside of this space belongs to that all of the games that fit inside the space gonna have that in common, kind of thing. Not a great explanation, but it's relatively obvious, I think. And then I'm gonna talk about what the Skyrim design space is. According to me, I may have missed some part, who knows. And then let's talk about some things that aren't like Skyrim that you might think, but wait, there is, a game that likes Skyrim, and I'm gonna be, no, there isn't a game like Skyrim, but I may have missed something. We'll see. Okay. So part one. So here's just like an example of how you might think about design spaces. So if you think about it as like a chart or a graph or plot or something where you have like, okay, Skyrim, for example, it's open world, right? So it's gonna mark out everything on the right side of this axis, and then let's say that we have, like, we think about the game along multiple dimensions. So one would be like open worldness, one is the quality of the game, and Skyrim, I think, is a interesting game because it's quite good, but it's also not it's never really good. It's just like there's just a weird span, which is maybe what makes it good. And so you might think that, like, this is the design space of Skyrim using just these two dimensions. And I think if you add multiple dimensions, you could think of it as like just a multi-dimensional blob, and like everything that is inside of that blob is the design space of Skyrim. So every game that fits inside of this blob would be a Skyrim-like. That's basically what I'm saying. And so part 2 then. So here is the start of some things that I think Skyrim has. So it's first person. That I think, first of all, that cuts off a lot of the indie Skyrims. Like there are a lot of great open world RPGs, indie open world RPGs like Avernum, and most recently Caves of Qud, or however you pronounce that, etc. But I think none of those count as an indie Skyrim because they don't give that same feeling. Like they give another feeling, but they don't give the Skyrim feeling. And I think what we're after is something that gives that same feeling as Skyrim. And so first person, cuts away a lot of those. Another one is the art style, and I think that's one of, or maybe even Skyrim's strongest part. It's still gorgeous to play, just because its art style is so good. And that also cuts away a lot of the actually all of these I think does a good job of cutting away a lot of indie RPGs, because just the scope of the way that they are in Skyrim, like the amount of these things that are in Skyrim, the quality of them just makes it really hard to get to that level, if you're making an indie game. And so I think so it isn't just like having one of these, it's also like the quality of it, I would say, to define this design space. The exploration in this really handcrafted condensed open world is perhaps, I think, what primarily maybe gives Skyrim its feeling. This thing of like, I can decide to go to like another town, but as soon as I walk 100 meters somewhere, I'm like, that looks really cool, I want to go there. And then when you find something, and it's always something cool, you spot something else, and then you go to there, and then like finally you're like, oh wait, wasn't I going to that town, right? That whole thing is just I think what a lot of people like about Skyrim. Then there's all the Elder Scrolls lore, main story quests and politics and factions inside Elder Scrolls. That's also like a just having that also cuts away things like roguelikes, where there isn't really much story, where it's just like going out into an open world to kill a bunch of stuff, like Tales of Mamai Hall, however you pronounce that. There is a story probably, but it's not very strong. There's these dungeons and forts that you need to take out, which I find is always quite fun. The music, I wanted to include this even though I think you may know that it's pretty problematic, but I think it has to be said that the quality of the music in all of the Elder Scrolls games, or at least Morrowind upwards, is just it's really good. I couldn't not include Stealth Archer. I think that's also like when you have something that becomes like a playstyle that everybody plays, and it ties into memes a bit, I guess, as well, but it also becomes like a big part of the feeling of Skyrim. Some of these are maybe not as strong or important as the others. I think this is also quite an important part, actually. It's a bit subjective, but like, and I'm not saying that Elder Scrolls is as like typical fantasy setting. It doesn't have orcs, or does it? It's a little bit, it is a little bit of its own thing, but it's still very much like, okay, this is fantasy without, it's not super weird or anything like that, or yeah. So I think yeah. And then we have a little bit more tied to the gameplay as such, but I think that this is also really important to define that Skyrim is a single player game, and if you play something like Valheim, that's a great game, and it has some of these, right? But just the fact that it's co-op and you're running around with your friends makes it a completely different experience. Even if you're playing Skyrim like without doing quests and such, I think just playing a game in single player is a completely different experience compared to like a game that's made for co-op. And I think for first person game this is almost always the same, but I just wanted to mention it anyway, that it's not a game where you have like a party, or even like in Mountain Blade where you have like one character but you have like an army as well. You just have your companions, but for the most part you're just like playing one person, right? This is also a big part of why Skyrim it doesn't seem that way maybe, but I think so. It's a big difference between these types of games where you create your own character that has that you can make, like you can name them and you can do whatever, define them however you want to, compared to games where you like embody a pre-written character that has their own sort of pre-written story that you sort of follow, and you don't really, like, you may make some choices, but you're always playing this character that the game has defined for you to play. I think that is also a big difference that makes people, that makes some games pass a lot of these but still make no, this is not a game like Skyrim. I don't feel like I'm playing Skyrim when I'm playing this other game. This is also maybe a smaller one, but I just like the fact that it's skill based and it's not like a level up game where you like you get generic XP points and then you get to place them quite however you want. It's also not class based, right? It's you can build your character in any way you want. I think that also is quite a bit of important for Skyrim games, or Elder Scrolls games. Okay, so this is basically it. I'm sure other people have other definitions, and primarily I think other people, you may value some of these much more or much less. But I think that if you are looking to, like, if I was a game dev who really wanted to make like I want to make a game, a Skyrim-like, so that I can attract all of the players who really liked Skyrim and want something like Skyrim, I think these are the things that you actually need. And skipping out on one of them, well, obviously, like, Bethesda humor is not a great like, maybe you can't use that, but you can do maybe something weird. I don't know. Okay. So let's talk about some games that aren't like Skyrim. So this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where let's say that this blue blob here is the Skyrim-like blob, the Skyrim-like design space, where all of the games in here have kind of the same feeling as Skyrim, and you're trying to make a game, or you're making a game, but and you're just kind of aiming for this. Like you have, can I go back? You have like all of these, but some of them sort of aren't as strong as they are in Skyrim, to the degree that they they make it so that it doesn't feel like a Skyrim-like. Then you may be designing your own design space, or game in your own design space, and that's totally fine, but you aren't actually a design a Skyrim-like. And this, I think, is true for a bunch of indie titles. And I think this is basically why we may never see an indie Skyrim-like, because it requires so much to get all the way up here. And I guess like a question is like, okay, how big do you have to be, and how good does the studio have to be in order to reach this area? Like, if you're 3 people, probably not enough. If you're 50 people with like today's tooling and everything, I think maybe you could do this. That's not to say like I'm not saying that like this might reach what Skyrim was like, but maybe today you actually need to aim over here, because the AAA games are even bigger than they are now. I don't know. Just something to think about. And so here was a thread on Reddit about, hey, can you recommend me some games like Skyrim? And a lot of these are like other Elder Scrolls games, like someone is recommending any other Bethesda game, or Enderal, which is a mod of Skyrim, like a whole conversion. Here's The Witcher, which it's a really cool game, but again you're playing this pre-scripted character, so I think it doesn't fall in. I think maybe Gothic 2 is a pretty good candidate. I think back in the day this would have maybe qualified. I think nowadays it's a little bit like, if you want to go back and play an old Yankee RPG that satisfies all of these, you might go for Gothic, but you might as well maybe replay Skyrim. I don't know. And Morrowind is a Bethesda game. Oblivion. Fallout 4, which is not fantasy. Kingdom Come is again a game where you play a character, a specific character. Guedonia is probably the sort of indie title that I think has the best vector. Like it tries to, I think, do a lot of the things that Bethesda does with Skyrim, but it's just like the vector there is too short. Outward is I think it fails because it's like, not saying it's a bad game, but fails to be a Skyrim-like because it's more about being like survival, realistic, hardcore, painful to play kind of thing. And so that isn't like what Skyrim does, so I don't think it's a Skyrim-like. And this is the Blue Sky tweet that I saw, and I was like, actually, I don't think Caves of Good is in this Skyrim. And that's not to say that I don't like Caves of Good. I do, but I don't think it's in the Skyrim. I do think that maybe Obsidian is what we're gonna get next as on Skyrim-like. That has been at least my initial impression of it. I don't know if, like, I haven't followed it that closely, but that was, I think, one of their first sort of marketing things, like, we're making a Skyrim-like, right? I don't know if they will succeed. I think, we'll see. I don't want to speculate. And I'm sure I've missed, a bunch of games here. Horizon Zero Dawn is not a Skyrim-like, I think, for multiple reasons. Okay. That's it. That was just my hot take on Skyrim-likes, and maybe someone got something out of it. I don't know. Thank you for listening.